The woke ideology that Secretary Austin has advanced has harmed our military. This culture war that we see with radical race ideology and radical gender ideology is intermingled, and it permeates all aspects of the Department of Defense and has even bled into the VA.
This is not something to poke fun at. Many of you know I have a trans sibling and a gender non-conforming sibling, and I can tell you the conversations we have in this body, the things that young people hear us say about their identities, it has real consequences on their mental health. And I think we all need to be mindful of that as we're having this conversation.
Is it worth funding the DEI programs in the military? What good has it brought to the military? We have the biggest recruitment crisis that we've ever had. That is a fact. And I believe that the DEI programs and the politicization of our military is another big reason why. Give us one single argument why the Chief Diversity Officer is worth funding.
I want to answer my colleague, Mr. Banks' question, because actually learning about systemic racism and cultural differences and bias, it's not only about cohesion within our military, it actually is about our military operations around the world. At a time when we're facing a recruitment challenge, to me, it makes no sense to be putting more barriers up to the very young people we should be recruiting and we should be trying to get to want to join the military.
The left wants to rob talented women and girls of opportunities to succeed and achieve their dreams in the swimming pool, on the court, and on the field because they can't or won't define what a woman is.
We're not talking about real women competing in women's sports. We're talking about real boys, real men competing in women's sports.
It's amazing but telling that the same people who scolded us about following the science during COVID have attempted to do anything but follow actual science when it comes to men and boys in women's sports.
Dr. Maya Angelou once said, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." Well, House Republicans have shown us over and over again who they are, and it's time we believe them. They've introduced a national abortion ban, they oppose paid family leave, they've blocked the ERA, they've fought against universal child care, and now they're using the false guise of protecting women to blatantly discriminate against the trans community and threaten the privacy of all women and girls. House Republicans make trans kids' participation in sports seem sinister and conniving, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Trans kids are kids. They should be able to live full lives with unlimited opportunities, including playing sports. And despite what some of my colleagues have falsely claimed, trans girls and women do not have an overwhelming physical advantage compared to others. Just like all athletes, sometimes trans athletes win and sometimes they lose. But we know this isn't about facts. This is about discrimination and scoring political points. So to my colleagues who haven't been exposed to the LGBTQ+ community or met someone who's trans or may not understand all of the different terms, you still know this is wrong. You know it's wrong to isolate and stigmatize and shame kids. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this legislation, and I yield back.
Now, Secretary Austin assures us that the DoD hasn't gone woke, but on August 30th, the Army's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Accessibility Office hosted a gender inclusion workshop. The workshop, quote, "The workshop will cover discussion training on gender identity, transgender, and non-binary 101. I shudder to think what non-binary 102 would be. I remember asking the secretary about critical race theory, and he barked at me that there is no critical race theory in the military. You have hired someone who is precisely a critical race theorist."
This is the first I've ever heard Mr. Garrison be described as a critical race theorist. You know, I trust my leadership from top to bottom that they will give me fair and balanced and unvarnished input. And for you to say that people are telling me what I want to hear, I get it, but I'm smart enough to know
that does happen.
Yeah. You know, maybe they're telling you what you want to hear.
I'm sorry, if we don't talk about it, it still happens. Like the notion that if we just don't talk about wokeness and we don't criticize radical gender ideology, that everything will be okay and we'll meet our recruiting goals, with all due respect, that is a very boomer mentality.
I just want to say how disappointed I am that we're having this conversation instead of dealing with actual national security needs in this body. And I appreciate your poster, Mr. Gaetz, but I just think that it's important we recognize that this is not just some academic conversation about wokeness, and this is not something to poke fun at. These are people who want to serve in our military, and let's be clear, their sexual and gender identity has nothing to do with their ability to complete that mission. So I hope that all of us here will be voting to report this resolution unfavorably, because this has real world consequences for people across the country, and I would hate to see more young people who feel like their government doesn't believe they have a right to exist. I yield back.
Thank you. Is there further discussion?
Really, at the end of the day, when you're debating, you're making arguments, you're making a point, and this is the argument that my colleague, Mr. Gaetz, is making with this. I think he's raising with this amendment by offering it. Is it worth it? Is it worth the taxpayer investment and the time, the millions of hours that are spent on DEI in the military? We have seen the public trust in the military sharply decline. I believe a big reason why is because of the left-wing DEI agenda and politicizing our military in a way that we have never seen before. Down 22% last year, the public trust in our military since 2017, a sharp decline in the public trust in our military. That's one reason that we should be defunding DEI programs, which are political programs, politicizing our military.
First, I want to say that we know that we have a recruitment and retention issue, and as the person on this dais closest to the age of the people we're trying to recruit, I can tell you for a fact that this is something that the people we are trying to recruit care about, because they want to know that they will be accepted into the military. We know that underrepresented communities like women and people of color are worried about possible discrimination and acceptance in our military, and therefore decide not to join. We know this. There are lots and lots of studies. It's not only about cohesion within our military, it actually is about our military operations around the world. Our failures in Afghanistan, the Sahel, Vietnam are due in part to our superficial understanding of history, society, culture, of the places that we are working in, and the part that our country has played in these countries and around the world. And as a nation, it's imperative that we properly prioritize both students and military leaders to think differently, to reckon with the dark chapters of our history, to understand systems, to understand bias, to understand and recognize their own blind spots. This isn't just a matter of wokeness or equity, although I represent Southern California, so I think that would be great. This is about making sure that we do not make the same mistakes moving forward that we have in the past, and it has real material impacts on our military and our national security. So that is why I think it's so important that not only do we not defund this, that we actually make sure that our military service members are learning about systems and biases, that very skills they're going to need to use when we send them to other countries, and they're going to have to figure out how to work with people who are different than themselves to achieve our shared national security goals. Thank you. I yield back.